On this Thursday night, the U.S. president takes another jab at Canada.
You can always become a state.
Why he claims America doesn't need its northern neighbor as uncertainty looms in Canada's lumber sector. California's new wildfires, why rain in the forecast could lead to more problems. Where does Trump's two-gender policy leave Canadians?
It's a lot of fear.
They do. Thailand's legalization of same-sex marriage. And unearthed after more than 4 decades. The long-lost Tina Turner song, just rediscovered.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. The U.S. president has taken another swipe at Canada, this time in a virtual address to global business leaders at the World Economic Forum in Switzerland. Donald Trump said he intends to make the United States a manufacturing superpower, and he repeated his line that Canada could avoid tariffs by becoming an American state.
One thing we're going to be demanding is we're going to be demanding respect from other nations. Canada, we have a tremendous deficit with Canada. We're not going to have that anymore. We can't do it. I don't know if it's good for them. As you probably know, I say you can always become a state. And if you're a state, we won't have a deficit. We won't have to tariff you, et cetera, et cetera.
Canada is America's second largest trading partner, but Trump dismissed the relationship as adversarial and unfair, claiming the U.S. does not need Canadian automakers, lumber, or oil and gas. Touria Izri has our top story on how Canada is responding.
Well, thank you very much.
Donald Trump took his fight against Canada to the global stage.
Canada has been very tough to deal with over the years.
Speaking to the World Economic Forum, Trump said the United States does not rely on its northern neighbor, despite importing more than $480 billion in goods and services from Canada every year.
We don't need them to make our cars, and they make a lot of them. We don't need their lumber because we have our own forests, et cetera, et cetera. We don't need their oil and gas.
The president repeated his claims. The U.S. is getting ripped off by its closest ally.
And it's not fair that we should have a $200 billion or $250 billion deficit.
In fact, the latest figures show that number is actually closer to $65 billion. Trump says he wants to impose tariffs in less than 2 weeks.
I think we'll do it February 1st.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau insists Canada will have a strong and robust response.
The federal government has continued to say clearly, as I will, that everything is on the table.
It's the rare policy the leader of the opposition agrees with.
Yes, we will apply counter tariffs to American products that we can get elsewhere, that we can make ourselves, and that we can do without.
Retaliation is something Ontario Premier Doug Ford supports.
Trump said again that he doesn't need any Canadian goods.
Isn't that sad, eh? That's very disappointing. He keeps saying that. I take the different approach. I talk to a lot of Americans and elected officials. I'm not hearing it from them.
Trump also said he'll ask NATO allies to spend 5% of their GDP on defense, up from 2%. Canada is a member of the alliance, but routinely comes up short. The U.S. does meet the current target, but it spends 3.4%, not 5%. Donna?
All right, Touria Izri, thanks. The United States is Canada's biggest market for our lumber and forest products, and now that Trump says the U.S. doesn't need Canadian lumber at all, it's clearly a negotiating tactic. But as Neetu Garcha reports, Canada's wood products industry still has to prepare for what could be coming.
The looming threat of U.S. tariffs has BC's lumber industry on edge.
75% of our softwood lumber exports are destined to the U.S.
How concerned are you about these tariff threats?
Yeah, it's very concerning. Thinking about planning and investment decisions, they're all kind of in limbo.
The expiration of the 2015 softwood lumber agreement has left trade in limbo. With nearly 15% duties already in place on Canadian exports, a proposed 25% increase could disrupt the entire supply chain, including pulp and paper.
The industry supports about 100,000 jobs in the province. That's both direct and indirect. Some of our estimates suggest that maybe there could be a 25% reduction in our exports.
Nova Scotia's forestry sector shares similar concerns, with $600 million in exports at risk.
The United States needs forest products from Nova Scotia. They need the forest products from the rest of Canada in order for their economy to function as well.
Business owners and industry workers in BC tell Global News the U.S. president's claims America doesn't need Canadian lumber are causing even more concern. Experts argue the U.S. relies on Canadian lumber to meet demand. But the southern United States are set to surpass Canada in lumber production for the first time in decades, as trade tensions and environmental challenges affect Canada's industry.
With reconstructions in LA after the fire, the demand for this kind of products will be huge. There is quite a bit of competitions with other suppliers of this kind of products around the world. And so I'm sure it's not that easy to replace the US market.
For now, it's a waiting game as BC's lumber producers look to navigate yet another trade dispute with their biggest customer. Neetu Garcha, Global News, Surrey, BC.
A U.S. federal judge has blocked President Trump's executive order declaring that children born on U.S. soil to undocumented immigrants would no longer be treated as citizens. Birthright citizenship is enshrined in the U.S. Constitution. The judge issued a restraining order that will halt Trump's executive order for the next 14 days. The Department of Justice says it will vigorously defend Trump's executive order in court. We have some breaking news from Ontario. Global News has learned Premier Doug Ford will call a provincial election next Wednesday, January 29th. The Premier has been strongly hinting at going to the polls early, claiming he needs a strong mandate to deal with tariff threats from U.S. President Donald Trump. If he calls it on Wednesday, Election Day would be February 27th. The federal Liberals are about to begin the process of picking a new leader who will face President Trump and lead them into the next federal election. A suite of candidates have put themselves forward to replace Justin Trudeau as Liberal leader. The frontrunners are widely considered to be Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland. Candidates had to declare their intentions by today, and the winner will be declared March 9th. Mackenzie Gray looks at who is in and how they plan to win over Liberals.
Can you explain the decision behind changing the capital gains taxes?
It's another Chrystia Freeland flip-flop.
I'm really glad to be here today to be meeting with my caucus colleagues.
Before meeting with Liberal MPs, the former finance minister is now saying she's against the capital gains inclusion rate increase.
Could you describe this year's budget, please?
That was the signature policy from the last budget she helped introduce less than 9 months ago.
For 99.87% of Canadians, personal income taxes on capital gains will not increase.
Freeland blamed the election of Donald Trump for needing to change course, but it's also part of her push to detach herself from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau after spending 9 years as his top minister, a move supported by MPs who've endorsed her.
Well, I've never been in favor of it. I was arguing against it in caucus, and I let my constituents know that this wouldn't have been my choice.
Freeland and her main challenger, Mark Carney, both met today's deadline to officially join the race, submitting the required signatures and an initial $50,000 deposit to the Liberal Party.
I'm officially a candidate for the upcoming Liberal leadership race.
Government House Leader Karina Gould also making the cutoff and agreeing with Freeland on the capital gains changes.
I don't think we got the capital gains tax increase right last year.
Mark Carney hasn't clarified what he would do with capital gains, but getting rid of the proposal isn't universally supported by caucus.
It is unfair when you look at those who are passive investors and they ultimately pay a lower tax rate in some cases than a nurse or a teacher.
The Liberal Party is expected to take a few days to officially confirm which candidates have passed the first leadership hurdle, and the next one comes quickly, Donna, with candidates needing to give over another $50,000 to the party next Thursday.
Okay, Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa, thank you. Canadian students and teachers have been hit by a data breach of PowerSchool, the organization entrusted with the personal information of thousands of students and families across Canada. School boards in multiple provinces and territories are affected, along with more than 60 million people worldwide. Canada's largest school board, the Toronto District Board, says nearly 1.5 million current and former students have been impacted. The breach was first discovered by the software company in late December. Toronto School Board says information such as health card numbers, home addresses, and phone numbers may have been breached. It also says data dating back as far as 1985 could be involved. In Southern California, new wildfires north of Los Angeles have now forced more than 30,000 people to evacuate. Those fires have exploded in size in the last 24 hours, fanned by strong winds. And as Jackson Proskow reports, firefighters are doing all they can to battle those walls of flames.
This is obviously near a much more populated area and next to one of the busiest freeways in the world.
Exhausted by weeks of infernos, firefighters in California face a new round of flames.
The fire remains a difficult fire to contain.
In the hills near Los Angeles, several new blazes erupted Wednesday, forcing students to flee schools and pushing 31,000 residents out of their homes.
I just moved here a few months ago. I built my house and now I have to evacuate.
Bone-dry vegetation could ignite at any moment. Red flag warnings are in place. The Hughes fire exploded to more than 4,000 hectares in a single day in the area just north of the Palisades and Eaton fires. Those blazes killed at least 28 and torched thousands of homes.
My brother just lost his home over in Altadena fire, and now I'm like, oh my God, now it's my turn.
The staggering toll of this California fire season puts it among the costliest disasters in American history.
I will say that Los Angeles has changed everything.
In Washington, President Donald Trump is now suggesting federal aid is not guaranteed as he continues his feud with California's Democratic governor.
I'd rather see the states take care of their own problems.
As residents take matters into their own hands, things seem destined to get worse. These barren hills could see their first real rainfall this weekend. Far from welcome, the rain risks triggering mudslides of toxic ash.
Just even mud is enough, but they're clearing toxic debris, so you can take a guess that it's not going to be healthy.
A storm to come in a state that's still weathering the worst. Jackson Proskow, Global News, Washington.
In the UK, an 18-year-old has been jailed for a minimum of 52 years for a ferocious knife attack at a Taylor Swift-themed dance class last summer. Axel Rudacabana was given 13 life sentences for stabbing 3 children to death and injuring 10 others. The judge called it the most extreme, shocking, and exceptionally serious of crimes. It is the longest sentence ever given to an 18-year-old. It's unlikely he'll ever be released. There will now be a public inquiry into how the system failed to stop the killer, who is known to be obsessed with violence. A challenge to Quebec's Bill 21 coming up by the controversial secularism law is going before Canada's highest court. The Supreme Court of Canada has agreed to hear a challenge to Quebec's controversial secularism law. It bans certain public sector employees from wearing religious symbols on the job. Bill 21 is being fought by 6 different groups, but Premier François Legault says Quebec will defend its values. Mike Armstrong reports on the debate heating up all over again.
It may be a sign the Supreme Court struggled with whether to hear the politically charged challenge to Quebec's Bill 21. Where it usually takes the court about 4 months to decide, this time it took twice that. The Council of Canadian Muslims, one of the applicants fighting the bill, isn't complaining about the wait.
It's a law, a populist law, designed to capitalize on popular feelings of angst surrounding religious minorities, particularly women in hijab.
Quebec's secularism law was adopted in 2019. It bans public sector employees in positions of authority from wearing religious symbols, meaning people like judges, police officers, or teachers can't wear things like turbans, kippas, or crucifixes. One teacher who fought the bill in the early days felt she had no choice but to move. She says she's confident those still fighting will win in court, and should.
Not once have I had a student tell me, Miss Court, because you wear a turban, I want to wear a turban too. So, to be honest, as an educator, a lot of this is just ridiculous and, quite frankly, stupid.
The law has been upheld by lower courts because Quebec used the notwithstanding clause overriding the Federal Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Now, the Supreme Court's eventual decision will affect all Canadians when other provinces use the notwithstanding clause. Because of that, Ottawa says it will join the case and argue against the bill.
When it's a matter of national importance and there's a national conversation about interpreting charter rights that will have an impact right around the country, we are going to be there.
Well, that intervention is getting strong criticism from the Quebec government. Posting on social media, the secularism minister says Ottawa getting involved isn't only a lack of respect, but an attack on the autonomy of federated states. Quebec, he says, will defend the law, and Ottawa should stay out of it. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
Ahead, a caution for gender-diverse Canadians considering travel to the U.S. now that Trump's back in charge. Saskatchewan's government is no longer pursuing a province-wide gender policy for school change rooms. The province's Ministry of Education now requires that all school divisions develop, implement, and make publicly available a policy on change room usage that upholds the privacy, dignity, and comfort of all students. During the fall election, Premier Scott Moe said he would introduce a policy restricting students to change rooms based on their assigned sex at birth. After forming government, Moe said it was no longer a priority after a backlash from trans advocates who argued it could endanger students rather than protect them. In the U.S., President Trump is boasting that he's reversing what he calls all the radical left policies and that there are only two genders, male and female. As Heather Urix-West reports, the change in administration has some Canadians questioning how safe it is for them to travel south.
Jay Hendricks will soon be 20, but the transgender teen from Calgary was aware of its gender identity at a very early age.
It was around the second grade, I think, that it kind of started popping up that I wasn't a boy, and all the other boys in the school knew that I wasn't.
Today, Jay doesn't identify as male or female, an option that has been recognized with an X on Canadian passports since 2019. The X designation also became an option on U.S. passports in 2022. But speaking to the World Economic Forum in Switzerland, the president again made his new government's policy clear.
There are only two genders, male and female, and we will have no men participating in women's sports, and transgender operations, which became the rage, will occur very rarely.
I have an X on my passport. I'm traveling through America in May. I'm worried about what that interaction will look like.
Global Affairs Canada says it's monitoring the situation in the U.S. and urges those traveling to the U.S. with an X gender passport to be cautious. The shift in U.S. federal gender policy follows a series of state-level bills limiting transgender rights, including access to things like gender-affirming health care. In Alberta, legislation on student gender identity, transgender sport, and surgery policies was passed last month. Saskatchewan is pursuing changes as well.
We've certainly seen trans rights under attack in Canada, and so we should be having these conversations, particularly at this time where we have a federal election looming in the not too distant horizon.
Because for people like Jay,
it's a lot of fear and a lot of concern for what I'm going to have to do to keep my rights.
For many in the transgender community, 2025 has already become a very anxious time. Heather Urix-West, Global News, Calgary.
Tie the knot next, a landmark day for same-sex couples in Thailand. That is a new release from the late Tina Turner called Hot For You Baby. It was originally meant to be on her 1984 album Private Dancer, but it was dropped back then. The master tape went missing and it was recently rediscovered in time for the 40th anniversary re-release of that blockbuster album Private Dancer in March. In Hollywood, nominees for the 2025 Academy Awards have been announced, and as always, there are some Canadians in the mix.
When you're brought up in an institution like the Catholic Church, you have strict rules.
Sugar Cane, a film exploring missing Indigenous children at St. Joseph's Mission Residential School in BC, is nominated for Best Documentary. It's directed by Toronto journalist Emily Cassie and Secwepemc filmmaker Julian Brave Noisecat, whose father was born at the school. Acclaimed Quebec filmmaker Denis Villeneuve is also up for a major award. His sci-fi sequel Dune Part 2 is nominated for Best Picture. There was a big wedding in Thailand today. Nearly 2,000 same-sex couples tied the knot. Thailand is the first Southeast Asian nation to legalize same-sex marriage. It is a dream come true for marriage equality campaigners who have fought for this for years. Redmond Shannon reports.
Traditionally, it's said to be bad luck to see your bride on the morning of a wedding. But these blushing brides are laying the foundations of a new tradition. Anticha and Vorawan among the hundreds of same-sex couples at the end of a long road. Their prayers answered.
We got this one right.
Joining other brides and grooms on the first day of legalized same-sex marriage in Thailand. Vorawan says it gives them stability. Their rights on inheritance, pensions and adoption have changed overnight. With the new law, the country becomes just the third Asian nation to legalize marriage equality after Taiwan and Nepal.
It means the world to us and to Thai people because we've been waiting for this moment for long.
This couple called it a moment of perfection. Previously, they had to pretend to be brothers to legally live as a family. A former Thai Prime Minister alluded to Donald Trump's recent rollback on gender identity laws in the US, saying even if Thailand is smaller, their hearts are bigger. But LGBTQ2+ activists say more needs to be done on gender in Thailand and on other rights. This child, born to a surrogate, is parented by Jacob and Geng, but only Jacob is recognised by law.
We have real concerns what then happens between Geng and our son under the eyes of the Thai law.
For now, though, it is a day of celebration, making it official in a country long known for its openness toward diversity. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
And that is Global National for this Thursday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is Golden Ears Provincial Park in BC. We'd love to see your Canada. Please email it to globalnational@globalnews.ca. And thanks for watching. Neetu Garcher will be at the anchor desk tomorrow, and I will see you again next week. Bye-bye.